I'll be like, yeah, we're here. Oh my goodness. Hello, and welcome to Lady Jane Books. I know it's been like the first time you've seen me since January, but I am so excited because I'm here with one of my all-time favorite guests, Carrie from Very Literary Kari. Hi, Carrie. Welcome, welcome. It's so nice to see
Hi,
you.
I'm so happy to be back with you, Jane. It has been way too long, my friend.
I know. It's been ridiculous. It's been too much. It's been too much, Carrie. Um, so yeah, so I want to thank you so much for like doing this really impromptu um buddy read with me. I basically like messaged you and I was like, "Hey, you remember that book that you hauled like a while ago that we both said we wanted to see? Can we read it now?" And you were just so kind to just jump right in and just get back into that buddy read groove with me. So thank you, Carrie.
Absolutely. Anytime I get the opportunity to read with the Lady Jane, then I'm going to do that.
Likewise with the very literary Carrie. So, for before
Thank
we begin, what were your like initial thoughts? Because I know you bought this kind of on a whim, I think, if I remember correctly. So, what were you kind of expecting before we even got into it?
Well, you know, I really I don't think I'd even watched any videos on this book. I know some of the booktubers that I follow have read this book. Um, but I just thought it's a short one. It's supposed to be about demonic possession.
Always a
That's
good
what
time.
all of the stuff on the back says. So I thought it had potential. And also one thing that caught my attention on the back, it has kind of an excerpt from the book. It's almost like one of those quizzes, those personality quizzes that you see in
Oh,
like Cosmo
yeah.
magazine or something. Are you possessed by a demon? So that kind of
Mm.
caught my attention. And yeah, I thought this was the perfect book for us to read together.
Well, and thank goodness you did because this has been on my TBR for actual years. Like I went on a big like Kindle book buying binge years ago and this was like one of them and I kept meaning to get to it. So when you hauled it, I was like, well, this is going to be perfect. You know, it's a spooky book. Carrie's got it. It's on my TBR. It's going to be like the perfect storm in the best way. Before we dive in, I just want to say hello to some people. I think Mason was here. Hi, Mason. I don't know if you're still here, but
Hi,
it's nice to
Mason.
see you,
Our favorite narrator,
our favorite
Mason
narrator.
in the Dark.
And
Absolutely.
Hyper Sanity Books. Hello. It's been a minute. How are you? Thank you for joining in. And we have Jason. Oh, Jason Crosby's book. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Jason. Good to see you again. And
And
Kevin, good to see you.
Kevin, how are you? It's nice to see you. I always like your discussions in the group reads. It's so much fun. Ross Games, hello. Welcome. And PR Far, hello. How are you today? Thank you for joining in. Full house today, Carrie. Hey, look at us.
I tell you what, the tag team, garnered an audience today. I don't know if
I know they
they
heard
if they
Carrie's
wanted to
coming
see
to
us, if
town,
they missed
and
us.
something like that. They heard Very Little Carrie is going to be a guest, and they came running. So I did not realize that this was kind of more of a novella. I thought at first it was like a full length like novel, and I have to admit I love demon possession stories. Like they're one of my guilty pleasures in the horror genre, and so I was really excited about this one. But I didn't know what to expect because the blurb kind of made it sound really ambiguous. Did you get that impression, Carrie?
um, it's kind of interesting because this book really reminded me of another book I read last year, called In the Grip of It. And
Oh,
the author's name is like Jacques Jemp or something like that. Someone in the comments will probably correct me. I don't remember. But that book is similar. It's very similar. and I really enjoyed that book. That book was really interesting to me, and it was ambiguous as well. It was kind of like, you read the book, and I know it's supposed to be about demonic possession, and a
Mhm.
lot of you guys, if you look up book reviews, I'm sure the majority of the book reviews on this book will talk about demonic possession. But when Jane and I were reading it, we kind of, we had some questions. We had some thoughts that maybe not. There could be some other things at play here. So, yeah, I really like that. Years ago, I was the type of reader, I did not like, ambiguity. I wanted all of my questions answered. I wanted everything to be kind of neat and tidy and wrapped up. And the older I get, the more I appreciate um, how much talent really goes into kind of writing these very ambiguous endings and these stories that really make you think, and they lend themselves to discussion. I think that's probably one reason why I like those type of books now, is because I have all of you
Mm.
guys on booktube that I'm able to talk about books with, so it's a little bit better. I have someone to talk it through with. Whereas before, if you didn't really have anyone to talk with, it's kind of like, okay, I want all my questions answered. I want to wrap this thing up. But it makes it almost a game, really.
Yeah, I agree. And I totally agree with what you're saying about like the more you appreciate reading and appreciate stories through BookTube, the more you actually kind of like some ambiguity. Um, I know that like I was like you, I hated it. I was like, no, I need my answers. Like I need it all like done so I don't keep thinking about it. But I think that's actually the beauty of it is when you keep thinking about it and you want to think about it in
Yes.
different ways. So I'm glad that you said that because I totally agree. And we are joined by Sam, but greetings to
Sam.
Sam. Hi, Sam. How are you? Thank you for stopping by. It's so nice to see you. So yeah. So yeah. What did you think of the very opening scene, though? I'm curious.
The opening scene.
Yeah, the opening scene, the very very beginning.
Okay, I remember you. If I remember right, you were kind of like, I don't know how I feel about this opening scene, and
I
and it was
That's
funny
right.
because I loved it. I was just like, what the heck is this author doing? It just kind of came out of nowhere, and it was funny. Like I laughed out loud when I read
Yeah.
this scene. Just to give people a little bit of a, I guess, background on
Mhm.
what the opening scene is like.
Yeah, this is gonna be full of spoilers, guys. Just so you know,
Yeah,
we're not gonna hold back. It's novella. Like there,
yeah.
you can't not do spoilers. So just so everyone knows, we're gonna be spoiling "Come Closer" by Sarah Gran.
Sorry, guys. But that opening scene where she takes a project she's working on into her boss's office and leaves it, and apparently it's filled with expletives. It's basically just telling him where he should go and what he is,
Should
and
put
and
that
that sort of
project.
thing. And yeah, exactly. And then he calls her in his office, obviously, and he's livid. And she's like, "What? I don't know what you're talking about. I brought a project in here, but that was just the project updates. I don't know, and it was just so crazy to me. Um, and so, yeah, that really made me wonder about her, and I think that may have triggered for me that, okay, I know this is supposed to be about demonic possession, but is there something with this main character's personality? Is there something
Mm,
with her that is causing these things in her character? So yeah, but I laughed out loud. It was just, I could just totally imagine this boss, and it, the office water cooler, I'm sure, was just going crazy with that story. But it was a
it's
big
kind of
departure too. It was a very,
yeah,
like, that was a scene, and then it we never really hear about the boss anymore. It just goes right into Amanda and her husband Ed and their home life. So we really don't even see her at work again.
right. It's kind of like one of those worst nightmares type of situations. Like, like when you dream, like, you showed up with like, a wrong paper or like no clothes on or something like that in the middle of school or something
Yes.
like that. Those really weird dreams. Um,
I
that's the
always
exact
had the
impression that I
dream
got.
Yeah, I always had the dream that I went to school as a student with no pants on, but I had a shirt on, and I was trying to get water from the water fountain, and I was like trying to like pull my shirt down and get water and protect my modesty. And yeah, I don't know, that was always a reoccurring dream for me. Very specific, I know, but
Yeah. So mine didn't have water, but I would always have dreams that I like forgot my clothes somehow, and I'm just like, "How do you do this, Jane?" But yeah, it's got to be like something psychological or something like about vulnerability. But I've had that dream too, Carrie. Before we
yes.
continue, Mason is here. Hello, Mason. It's nice to see you. I'm so glad you could stop in. I was hoping you would stop in. Um, And Jason Cross says ambiguity can be fun and thought provoking, but most of my audiobook listening is during work, so I need clear cut endings. All right, see, Jason needs his clear cut endings. Um, yeah, so I have to say, as much as I really love that opening scene, and I thought it was kind of interesting, and it was kind of like a hook, if really like a classic hook to get you reading. I kind of a little tiny bit wish that we got more background on who this main character was because I do feel that, we have this crazy scene and then she kind of moves on and goes into like the progression of the possession. So my only little tiny gripe about this book is that I wanted to connect a little bit more with her and that would have made that scene even better. What do you think about that, Carrie?
Yeah. And I think too, you went into this expecting a novel as
Yeah, that's
well.
true. That's
So
true. That's
I
true. That could be a
think
me
I
problem. That's a Jane problem.
no, no, I think and I think she could have done that and it may have been better as a full length novel because you would have gotten a little bit more character development because you're right, there's a lot going on in this book and it is definitely plot driven. I mean, it's the possession stuff starts happening immediately. There's noises in the
Mm.
house and then we start getting Amanda and Ed having frequent arguments and it just kind of snowballs from there. So there's a lot of things going on, but you're right, we don't really get um connected to the characters or an understanding about the characters. There's a little glimpse of it um,
Mm.
when Amanda talks about her imaginary friend. So that kind of gives us like a little bit of a peek, but it's almost like a teaser. Um, we don't really get the full story there.
Yeah, I agree. And I think uh, I mean, I know I like to know the characters a little bit more, but I think for generally what the story was, it got away with it. You know what I mean? Because it's hard. It is kind of like a spooky, scary book, so we don't need that necessarily. It's more of a Jane want instead of a Jane needs. So, I just kind of noticed that. But what do you think of the relationship between the main character and her husband throughout this? I'm kind of curious because I feel like that was significant, but I want to hear your thoughts first.
Yeah, that was very significant. Keep in mind that Amanda does change parts of herself for this relationship.
Mm,
So she doesn't smoke cigarettes because Ed is allergic.
mm,
Um, she has to be a lot neater at home. She has to put things in their place and that sort of thing, which I mean, I think everyone just does these things probably, through the process of growing up and getting your own place and
compromise.
getting more
Yeah,
responsible and yeah, and you're more maybe health
compromise in
conscious
a
or whatever,
relationship.
but it she's changed a bit in the relationship, so I don't know, this kind of goes back to your point. I don't know if we really know who Amanda truly is.
Yeah.
So is she the person that Ed fell in love with, or is she the person that hid all of these ugly things about herself to make Ed fall in love with her and then just reverts back to all of those bad behaviors as soon as, things don't go her way.
That's
Um,
exactly what I was thinking. That I'm like, because it's kind of interesting the way it's set up is that, she's kind of like his perfect lady. And then, as soon as like the smoking started, I was like, wait a minute, she doesn't seem the type that would do this. And so that's exactly what I was thinking, that it was a little bit more about um, almost like a facade that she had before. And that kind of makes us question what's happening to her in the possession, whether or not it's actually a possession or if it's just her and her state. So I thought that was really interesting. I'm glad you picked up on that too.
Yeah, for sure. That you know, I felt bad for Ed. I just felt so
Yeah.
well, obviously in the end we
Well,
all
yeah, I
feel
mean,
bad for Ed. I mean,
yeah.
spoiler alert.
It doesn't end
Ed
well for
gets
Ed. It does not
Ed
end
gets
well.
it in the end. But I felt bad for Ed because he was very supportive. He sent her to the doctor. He took her off to the beach for the weekend. He wanted
Beautiful
them
vacation.
to, reconnect. I mean, he really kind of did all of the things
Yeah.
that you would hope, someone in that position would do. And, some of the stuff, yeah, he was out late working, but he always let her know where he
Yeah.
was, and then so she flipped the script on him, and she stays out late, but she doesn't tell him where she's at, and she doesn't tell him like what time she's going to be home. And so I think she takes these little things that he does that annoys her, and she flips it on him and takes it just to an extreme,
Yeah.
um you know extreme version of it. And
Yeah.
the infidelity, do we
A lot of
want to speak on
infidelity.
that? Because
Yes, yes, we do. That was central to the book.
she she goes there, she goes to these bars, she stays out late, and she ends up with these men that she doesn't even know.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
that's the
let's
scariest part for me. That was like a scary part for the book for me because I'm like, "Ooh, that's so risky," and just ooh,
yeah.
yeah.
And there's a point at which Ed, towards the end, we know he's dating someone,
Mm,
but it isn't until after, kind of the point of no return with her. I mean, he has every suspicion that she's not faithful.
yeah.
Um,
I think it's
he's
pretty direct. I think he like catches her at one point,
Oh
like
yeah, he
straight up.
catches
Yeah.
her. Yeah. Um, the drugs.
Mm.
She was doing drugs. I'm sure he knew. Um, that was going on. So yeah, do you feel like he was unfaithful before at all, or do you think?
Honestly, no, I didn't get that impression because I do feel like they had a very, very good relationship. It may not have been perfect. I think it may have been like an average relationship, or maybe potentially like above average in terms of romantic relationships go. But I think what happened is that she kind of just got a little bit fed up with certain dynamics, and instead of communicating that effectively, we got this whole weird situation, and this she kind of uses those frustrations as a means to justify some of her behavior, which is really scary. And we can argue whether that's the demon or not, but I think that I do think that he tried everything that he could, and it was so sad to see the deterioration of their, marriage. I think they were married, right? Or were they?
Yes, they were married.
Yes, they were married, yeah. Yeah, right, because he filed for divorce, and to kind of see, like, just the total deterioration, and I can't help but thinking, but even just a little tiny bit of effort or communication could have really avoided a lot of things, and so that's another thing where I wasn't sure if it's like the demon, where she's like, "Oh, I can't say, it's right on the tip of my tongue, but I just can't get the words out," or if it was something else, maybe an admission of guilt or a cry for help or something. Because I think you did have a theory of, that there were other aspects at play. And so you could really take that, it's not necessarily the demon itself that's stopping her, but in fact, another issue that's stopping her symbolically. So that's what I personally think.
Okay. Do
Yeah.
you do you think it was demonic possession?
Ooh, that's a good question, Carrie. I think it could be argued either way. Talking about ambiguity, um, I would. How about you share your theory? Because I want you, because you were the one that came up with this, so I kind of want you to, talk about your theory, and then we can kind of dissect it. Because I feel like I can't answer that question without the groundwork that you put in the work
Okay.
on that one. So that's your theory. You go for it, Carrie.
Okay. Well, this could be completely off base. This could be just totally wrong. But when I was reading this book, I had the thought that the demon could be symbolic of demons that she's fighting. So this could be
Mhm.
mental illness, or it could be drug addiction.
Mhm.
And the demon that she refers to always tells her, like, I'll never leave you alone. You'll always have me,
I'm the only one that
and
loves you, or something like that. I think at one point it said that. Yeah.
yeah. And we do see a lot of the characteristic behaviors that people suffering from addiction, have in this book. So, we start to see her not showing up for work, not completing projects, not doing things on time. We start to see her steal, which was an uncharacteristic behavior. We see her hurt people around her,
Mhm.
sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally. Um, she One of the first things she does is she burns Ed with a cigarette, and she's like, I don't even know why I did that, And I think, when you think about people who are addicts, and they hurt people physically and otherwise, but sometimes they don't even know, like, I didn't even know I did that, right? I was so messed up, I didn't know I did that. And there's one scene in the book where she is basically on the street, and
Yeah.
she's rolling around in trash and refuse and, like, the debris of drug
City
addicts.
light. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it just that kind of I guess that kind of imagery just stuck with me along the way, and it really made me question, is this a spiritual demon, or is this a real life demon that
Mm.
she is fighting? Because we do get to see that inner struggle with her, where she's like, oh, I really want to repair this relationship with Ed, I really want to say these things, but she doesn't, right? She
Mhm.
keeps going back out every night, she keeps going to the sketchy places. And maybe this idea about possession is just a delusion, which could be
Mhm.
brought on by drug drug use, or it could be brought on by mental illness, because she does seek out a couple of people, one being a therapist and another being someone who wrote a book about demonic possession, um, and neither of them seem to think she has that problem.
Mhm.
um, and of course, in the book, it's kind of portrayed that the demon, Nama, I think was her name,
Yeah, I think
was
so.
the demon's name, um, has, I guess, like a hold on these other people, or
Like
that's what our
infiltrated. Yeah.
yeah, like our character thinks that the demon has kind of like infiltrated these people. So that was a thought I had. And of course, this ends horribly. Ed,
Mm.
she murders Ed, and that's something else that that happens with people who are mentally ill and don't seek appropriate help. Sometimes, if they are
Mhm.
in some sort of psychosis,
Yeah.
sometimes those things happen. And same thing with drug addiction. So I could see some of the things in the book happening, um, and yeah, that was my thoughts on it. I don't know if I clouded your perception of the book after I threw that kind of monkey wrench into the into the discussion, but yeah, it was just something. I'm not sold one way or the other what is going on here, and I think that's the cool thing, like we said about the book, is that we don't really know. Um,
Right.
So there is the point that Ed was also hearing noises in the house, because it does start with noises in the house, but you know um that's really the only like outside. I guess
Mm.
the dog senses something is wrong with her
Mm.
and stays away from her or bites her at one point. But
Yeah.
that could also be just something that that could be explained as something else. Oh, Stephen Corey said tumor pushing on the behavioral portion of her brain. Here we go with the brain again. I feel like every time Jane and
Mm.
I talk, when we talk about these serial killers and stuff, we always end up talking about the
Always
brain.
the brain. It's always the brain.
It's the brain.
We
Maybe the
do.
brain is the demon.
Yeah, and like we talk about a lot with like our Sam Keen discussion, and
Yes,
yeah, we do
yes,
that a lot, Carrie. And the
we do.
Dr. Cream, yeah, I
Yep,
think we talked
Dr.
about Dr.
Cream.
Cream. Yeah, it always comes back to the brain.
It does. It does.
So I'm gonna be honest. At first, I saw this as kind of like a light, like fun, like demon possession story. Because again, I love demon possession stories.
A light, fun
Yeah,
demon
a light,
possession
fun
book.
demon possession story that ends in a murder. Easy reading. Um, but then as soon as you said that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I think you're totally right because it does again, and this book has some ambiguity to it. We has a little bit of like questioning. And so your theory would fit in very, very well with this. And also like kind of the certain behaviors of like hiding things, from her partner.
Yeah.
And I kind of saw like when she started smoking, kind of some after you said that, I went back and I thought, maybe the cigarettes were like a metaphor for something else. You know what I mean? Um, because it really started there with the smoking, and so if you
Yeah.
think about, the cigarettes and that behavior as something else, it really makes sense of this downward spiral. Um, so yeah, I think, but I also think both can almost be one and the same metaphorically as well. It can be both. So I thought that was really, really interesting that you picked up on that. I had not thought of that, and then I thought it was brilliant and totally changed my appreciation for the story.
Cool. Good. Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do have a question though. What did you think about the connections she made between the demon and her childhood imaginary friend?
That was one thing where that's where I thought it was all like demon because we do have this kind of like in traditional like demon horror stories there are like these imaginary friends that aren't really like friends. So I do see that's kind of like what put me initially onto the this is a demon story. um but also you could make an argument that within the story the appearance of the imaginary friend could be trauma based, and so maybe there was something like dramatic that happened in her childhood that caused this friend to appear and for her to cope. And I don't know this for a fact, but I would imagine that individuals who suffer with addiction may have suffered some type of trauma at some point in their lives. So within this
Yeah.
story, it would actually really, really make sense that, this probably something really, really horrible happened in her childhood. She created this imaginary friend to cope, and then it's spiral forward. Or you could see that this was actually the seed that would begin if we're talking about addiction, like kind of like the precursor, the little seed of this type of behavior as a result of something really, really traumatic and hurtful that happened to her. So I thought that was really interesting. I saw it as both ways when I was in my little demon um, story over there, and then especially after you shared your theory, I was like, yeah, that was actually really, really deep.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is something trauma based there. The connection. It's some sort of, and of course, we don't get this background. Here we go again. We don't
No,
really get the background of the
no.
character, so we don't know some of the facts. But, one would assume that the imaginary friend, much like this demon, whatever that demon
Mm,
is something that Amanda is using to fill a void or repair something that has been damaged.
right.
And obviously, she has some sort of, abandonment issues, attachment issues,
Yeah.
because clearly Ed is good for her.
I
And
know. I
all
I love Dad.
Yeah, and
Okay, I
all
like that.
indication is that he's a stand-up guy, but what does she do? She intentionally pushes him away. And as she's doing it, she knows she's doing it. She doesn't know why she's doing it, right? She knows, yes, I burned him with a cigarette on the couch.
Yeah, she's aware.
Why did I do that? I don't know why I did that. I don't know how it happened. So to me, that does speak to some sort of trauma. And here she is. She's fulfilling this prophecy that he's going to leave her, and that's why she needs this imaginary friend. She needs this demon, whatever this demon is,
Yeah.
to be there for her.
And something that really impacted me about the story is kind of this spiral into hopelessness as well. Like, because you do see the main character, I forget her name, to be totally honest. I think it's Amanda.
Amanda.
Amanda,
Yep.
right? Yeah, I couldn't remember.
I looked it up
Um,
before we came on.
okay, great, great, great. Um, so you do see Amanda kind of reach out for help in some regards, but then, when things don't go her way or she feels really upset or she's like not trusting of them, which there is a level of paranoia throughout the story too, which could also be a symptom of some of the theories we've discussed. You kind of see her eventually give up hope. And I think you really, really see that right before the incident with Ed, the final one, where she's just like all consumed by this and she doesn't see a way out. And I thought that was really impactful for me because of how sad it was, that you could really,
Yeah.
really sense that she's giving up hope and ultimately what happens because of that. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that she is consumed by it at the end. She totally is. And she's like, I can't fight it. I can't do anything about it. I am the demons. That was
Yeah.
really sad for me. That was sad because you kind of the thing about the story is that you want to see a turnaround here. You go want to see a fight. You want to see her get better, or you want to see some type of resolution. And what I found really interesting with that is that this is just a slow decline, and there's no turning around point. There's no like you're in there with the character. Like she is not going to turn around from this. Um,
Yeah.
and so I thought that was a really interesting play on it because again, so many times we want like the happily ever after, we want, the sunshine and roses, but this one never gave that to you. And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, it was pretty grim now that I think
Yeah.
about
Yeah, exactly. And you can see where it's gonna go but you're just as
it.
helpless as she is in the
Yeah.
story. You know what I mean? And you want to turn it around, but you know it's not going to and you know it can't and just the whole like psychology behind the story I think is pretty brilliant. I have to say. I think it's pretty brilliant.
What about, I just thought of this, what about the girl on the beach? So they go to the beach and she's out in the water, and there's a little kid out there who's
Mhm.
struggling,
Yeah.
and Amanda attempts to drown her. And
Yeah.
then when other people on the beach kind of catch sight of this, because the girl is able to pop up for a quick second and yell out for help.
Mhm.
And at that point, Amanda has no choice but to save her and yell for help and fake like she was, having difficulty and that sort of thing. So, um, what did you, and her tears when she got on the beach? I
Yeah.
mean, she was hysterical.
Yeah.
Um, what did you make of that?
So I actually saw that as the turning point to the whole story. That was kind of the point where, for me as a reader, I knew she wasn't going to get out of this, because it's a moment of realization of she knows exactly what she's capable of and what's become of her psyche. You can say like everything up to that point is kind of like negotiable a little bit, like, okay,
Right.
well, but that point where she's hurting a stranger and a child, that's where she was like, oh my gosh, I'm too deep into this. Like I don't have control over this anymore. Um, and so and that is kind of where we see things like speed up. It's the moment of realization when she knows there's a big problem, and yet she cannot stop it at that point. And I think she's really, really horrified to see the reality of her situation at that time. So that's how I took it, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts, Carrie.
I didn't really. sit down and think about that one. I guess it was just one of those moments that just kind of took me aback. I was just kind of like, whoa, like really taking this up a notch. The man she killed, because she kills the newspaper
Hmm.
guy, the guy who sells like the magazines or something on the
Hmm.
street, doesn't she?
Yep, she
In
does.
the
And
magazine
then
show.
she's on the
Okay,
news. Yep, and she
yeah,
doesn't realize it till later.
she realizes it later, right? Like, oh
Yeah,
gosh, it must have been
yeah.
me. I must have killed that guy who was rude to
They're like,
me.
oh wait.
Yeah. Because I blacked out on the street. I
And the same
guess.
thing with the burning of the husband. Like
mm,
we
mm,
know she knows, but it's like later that she really
Right.
realizes.
Well, I guess this is the first time, now that I'm kind of
Hmm.
processing this while we're talking it out. I guess that's the first time that she's like fully aware of what
Yeah,
she's doing. Because, like you said, she
exactly.
blacks out with the guy on the street, and then with
Yeah,
the
everything
cigarette
was like
burning,
negotiable
she's,
that you could
yeah,
negotiate away and like explain it. Maybe negotiate isn't the right word, but you can explain it away, but that you couldn't.
yeah. And
Yeah,
the girl's name
I don't remember.
was Nama. It was the same name as
Was it?
the demon. Yeah.
Oh, I totally missed that. Listen, I listened it on audiobook while I was walking, so I don't know, piece of
Yeah.
dust might have flown by, might have saw a swan, not sure. But but yeah,
Yeah, I'm
that's
pretty sure she
interesting.
had the same name. So, it's kind of strange. But it's also, that could have been something she manufactured, the girl's
Yeah,
name, because
yeah. Or
she
the demon did.
also, yeah, or the demon did. She
Mhm.
she has these, like you said, she's very paranoid, so she has these
Yeah.
paranoid moments with people in her life where she thinks that some of them also are possessed. Like the friend, there's a couple that they have over for dinner, and the wife, who she really doesn't like, they're alone together, and through like basically eye contact and like a couple of gestures, she gathers from that that this lady is also like one of,
Yeah.
them. So that
Paranoia,
was
a
a
lot of
little,
paranoia.
yeah, that was a little strange, hard to
Mm,
figure out.
yeah. I didn't realize that was the girl's name, but if that's true, then you can also say that this was the result of, if your theory is correct, like the addiction. And that's why like she's named that way because this is the addiction. This is the big problem there. Not just the act itself is the evil, which is kind of interesting. So that's brilliant, Carrie. I didn't even think of that.
You
Hey,
know, we're just
this
putting it
is
all
why we
together
have the
here.
discussions. Yeah, this is why we do this.
Uh,
Um, hmm, I had a question in my brain there for a minute. Um, what did you think of like the very, very end after the murder? Like, what did you think of all of that? Like the resolution, if you can call that.
what happened?
Where she ended up in prison
Okay.
and she's just like consumed by it.
Okay, because at the end she goes back and says, "I'll never leave you. I love you." All that. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that part.
Um. So yeah, that's kind of interesting because if she is okay, if we're gonna go with the addiction thing,
Hmm. Yep.
she's in prison now, so she's not. Hopefully, theoretically, she's not going to have access to her drugs of choice. So,
Hmm.
she will eventually be alone, and I guess she will still be alone with this addiction, right? Because the addiction will never leave
Yeah.
her. She will have to suffer through that in prison.
And
So
the
I guess,
guilt. And the
yeah,
guilt. We could
and the
make it
guilt.
to be guilt. Yeah.
I guess that's yeah. I guess that's a fitting end, no matter if it's demonic possession or you know addiction. She has to live with this and live with what she's done as a result
Hmm.
of this. But let's go with the thought that it's a demonic possession. Do you think that would be a good ending if this was truly just a demonic possession? Do you think the end result of her being in prison is a good one?
I actually don't think so.
Me
I
either.
recently, okay, good. I actually recently saw a movie, and it had a very similar like point. It was about like demonic possession and about it was a really great movie. Um, well, it wasn't, but the last 5 minutes were really brilliant in my brain. And the whole crux of this movie is that after the demons be cast away, it doesn't come back to the person, and so that's what makes it really really sad. And I think if we saw that type of ending here, it would be so impactful. You ruined her life. The demon ruined her life. She's got nobody. She's has this. I'm pretty sure it's a life sentence at that point. And then I think it would have been more impactful if the demon was like, "You are no longer used to me, so I'm going to leave you now." And I think that I think that would also be fitting with the addiction side too, because then it kind of clears away all of like the smoke and the haziness, and then she can really
Hmm.
realize the damage that the addiction had on her life. So I personally was a little tiny bit disappointed. I was disappointed with the beginning, and I was disappointed with the end. Um, but I think, having something where it actually abandoned her would have been way more impactful. But I only knew that because I saw the film, and that was basically, a similar story to the film, and it was very impactful for me. So, um, I think that would be kind of a more interesting ending to see, like, "I'll never leave you," like, "I'll promise you the world," and then to have her rot away in prison by herself. I think
Yeah,
that would be so devastating to read.
because if this is a true demon, right?
Mhm.
Amanda's usefulness has run its course, right?
Gone.
I mean,
Can't
at this
kill
point,
anybody, can't do anything,
yeah, she's
can't steal.
done. So I'm with you. I feel like the demon should have flown the coop. It should have infiltrated someone else's life to reemerge and wreak havoc again, right? If that
Yeah.
is the, because that's the goal,
Mhm.
right,
Yeah.
of the demon. So, but then too, I guess the flip side of that could be that you know prisons are very grim places. And maybe the reason they are so grim is because there's demons in there.
Smart. Ooh, that's good,
You know,
Carrie. I didn't
maybe
think of it that way.
because we're looking at it like she can't really do any more damage on the outside world, and that is true. But I can't think of a more just grim, hopeless place
Yeah.
than a prison.
Where a demon would be so happy
And
because it's all misery.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they feed off of that, right? Yeah, because that's one thing we see through the book too. As the main character's having these dreams of this demon, the demon, starts looking better and gaining power
Yeah.
from all of the chaos and destruction.
Right. Yeah. So either way, it would have been good, Carrie.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it works. It works.
It
I
does.
really enjoyed it. Have you ever read anything from this author before?
No, I haven't. Have you?
I have not. I have not. But she has other stuff. Satan's Return.
Ooh, that sounds
Satan's
good.
Return to New York. Satan's Return to New York. And then Dope.
That's interesting.
So
Oh,
maybe there
we're
is and I don't know what that
connecting
book is
there.
about, but I'm assuming here that
It's
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Maybe Carrie, we're gonna have to read another one. I'm
We
sorry.
might have to.
That's
We might
just
have to.
it's just how it is. These are too good. We just get too into it. It's too entertaining, and we're gonna have to just read another one.
Yeah,
Nothing we
absolutely.
can do about it. Um, yeah, so no, actually, I was really, really happy about this because also I enjoyed this story as just kind of like a really creepy, like summary demonic possession story. And you can get deeper with it if you want to, but you don't have to. And so I think this is a really, really great horror story because of that duality to it. Um, I
Yeah.
enjoyed it when I thought it was just about a demon because I just love like Insidious franchises and The Conjuring and like all those like really really spooky stuff. So I kind of saw that this book as like the literary version of that, and I was wildly entertained by it, but I appreciate it so much more after I heard about your theory. And I think that's kind of the
Oh,
beauty of
nice.
this book.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're dealing with, of course, demons, super creepy. But when you think about it, it's, you're talking about someone's soul, so it is so
Yeah.
personal, it's so intimate, it's so, it could be so many things. So it's, yeah, it's, I think that's one of the reasons why demonic possession stories are so interesting to people.
Yeah. And
it's
seeing the
it's literally a
progression
fight for yourself.
for
Yeah.
your yeah, for your like essence and yeah. And
Yeah.
and I kind of like that, you can see like the trajectory of it and you want to intervene, but you can't, just like how we talked about in the
Yeah.
story. So I think either way, it works great as a demon story and it works really great as an addiction story. So I enjoyed
Yeah.
it. I'm so thankful that you read it with me.
I had so
So
much fun, as
what,
usual, reading with you,
what,
Jane.
what would you rate this book, Carrie? Out of 5 stars.
Oh, I don't rate books,
Ah,
but
I'm putting you on the spot, Lady Jane Books.
I'm gonna say, okay, again, I'm just gonna throw out there. I don't like rating books because
Mm,
it is so hard.
yeah, that's true.
Because I feel like, if I start rating books, people will say, well, how could you give this book 5 stars and then you gave this, literary masterpiece only a 3 star? It just, so it's very difficult when you're talking about different genres. But
Mm.
I'm just gonna go with it, Jane. I'm gonna say a 4 star. I'm gonna say a four
Me
star
too.
read.
4 out of
Yeah.
5, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
me
Mm-hmm.
too. It was pretty good. And
Yeah.
again, I like it that you can read it as like kind of a light summary demonic possession story, or you could read it, as something really, really way more serious. So I'm glad
for
I go ahead.
for our people, Jane, for I feel like for our people, like the people
Yeah.
we read with, this is a light summary read, even though it
Yeah,
sounds funny
exactly.
for
Yeah. Like demon story and she might be in addiction and she murders her husband and ends up in jail. It's
Oh,
it's
yeah.
all it's all light and fluffy here at Lady Jane.
Yeah, it's not a happy ending. Not a happy ending.
Oh, look who it is. It's Book Time with Ryan.
Book
Hi.
time with
How are
Ryan.
you? It's been a minute. Hello,
I know. I just
hello.
saw his new video he put out, and his thumbnails. I just cannot even. Every time I see his thumbnails,
So
they just make
creative.
me laugh. They just make me laugh. They make me smile. They're just so wonderful.
So creative. I gotta get caught up. I have not been on BookTube lately. I literally
Yeah.
carry. I think my last video was like in January, like, and it's June.
Come on,
That
Jane.
is so
Get
bad.
cracking.
I mean,
No,
come
I
on. I
get
know
it.
editing takes you a while, but
Yeah.
dang, Jane.
I
Um,
know it's hard. I have not been watching a lot of booktube lately, so I feel kind of bad. I do, scroll through and I'll throw something on when I'm in the car, but like sitting down and like, commenting and all of that, I just haven't done it. So, I think everyone has those seasons, Jane, where you're just
mm,
busy and you just
yeah,
can't fit it all in.
yeah. I agree. I agree. But I am looking forward to getting caught up on all my BookTube viewings. That's exciting for me. So,
Yes.
any final thoughts as we wrap this up, Carrie?
No, I would just say that it's always a pleasure reading with you, Jane. I love when we read together. Um, yeah, we've got to figure out what we're going to read next.
I
No
know.
pressure or anything, but
I got some
it,
ideas, but I got to float them
okay,
by you.
okay. But I loved this book. It was a quick read. It was just what I needed, I think,
Yeah.
because we were kind of both busy at the time, and it was one of those things that was easy to fit in. So it was really perfect. So I'm glad we read it.
Me too. Thank you again for kind of just hopping in there as I was like, "Hey, you want to read this week?" Okay. So thank you so much. I enjoyed it. I thought this was just exactly what I needed. Um, dark and creepy stories, and I always enjoy reading with you. So we have some ideas. We might be doing this again at some point soon. So thank you again very much for joining me today, Carrie.
Thank you, and thank you for everybody who showed up to to
Yes,
listen.
thank you so much. It's so nice to see you guys. I can't wait to connect with all of you. Carrie, any um uh oh, sorry. You there?
Yeah.
Oh, there you are. There you are. Okay, I see you. So any contact information? Like, are you on BookTube, Instagram, anything like that? Like any
You can
social
find
media
me
plugs?
on Instagram, Very Literary Kari, and YouTube, of course, Very Literary Kari. I do Black Hearts Book Club every month. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
Jane's in there, and
Yeah.
Kevin, who was in the chat, a few others. But we read a different book every month. This month we read My Cousin Rachel.
So good.
Next month, we're going to read Close to Shore, which is the true story behind Jaws. So
That's
we
exciting.
read things with a dark element to them. So I try to work in some nonfiction, try to work in some like classic mystery, some horror, you name it. We try to fit in a bunch of different things. So it is kind of an eclectic sort of book club, I guess, but we have fun. And yeah, if anyone's interested in that, just hop over to my channel and give me a comment. Let me know, and I'll add you to the group.
And it's always a good time. Always a good time. I'm part of it, and I always love the chat and the book choices. So definitely join up with the Black Hearts Book Club.
And
And
Jane
with
is also a co-host on that
I
always.
am, I am, I am.
So always try to get all of the booktube heavy hitters on that for at least 1 month out of the year. So
And it's always a good time with our chat and listening to everybody's thoughts and discussions and the book selections. So definitely go join if you're interested. It's a lot of fun. And that's all we have for today. Thank you so much again, Carrie, for reading Come Closer by Sara Gran with me. And thank you for everybody in the chat for joining in. It's so nice to see you. And we will see you next time.
bye guys.